My name is Peter Stock. I'm with Homeschool.today, and I want to welcome you to our seminar on homeschooling through high school and beyond. Tonight, I'm joined by a number of interesting guests, as well as Homeschool Today's own Patty Marler and technical assistance on the Zoom calls provided by Gerald Hubner. Now, it's our hope that having watched this seminar, you'll be encouraged and inspired to pursue leading your children in home education through the high school years, and you'll be equipped with a lot of the foundational knowledge you'll need to be successful at it. We believe it is a decision like homeschooling through the high school, through the high school years, very much like the elementary school years, that you'll find great value in. Now, you may be aware that it's increasingly the case that universities, colleges, and the trades are recognizing the unique value that home education grads bring to their institutions and programs. In fact, it's exactly this that caused me personally to first take notice of home education. Back in 1995, I was on a tour of Harvard University when I learned that fully a quarter of the undergraduate class at Harvard that year had been homeschooled. This was no accident. Just a few years prior to my tour, the Dean of Admissions at Harvard had stated that homeschooling is an educational asset that Harvard considers favorably when making admissions decisions. The dean was quoted as saying, "One often sees a self-reliance and independence as well as intellectual curiosity in people with such unusual educational experiences." Well, I have to tell you that a quarter of a century later, most other post-secondary institutions have caught on. Homeschoolers bring developed self-study habits and a love for learning, which leads to academic success. It's no longer just Harvard that gives preference to homeschoolers when applying for admission, though not all will publicly state it at present. Well, we have a great agenda lined up for you tonight. First, we're going to hear from Homeschool Today's own Patty Marler, who will lead us through a presentation on homeschooling through high school, followed by a short introduction to portfolios, which are often a key element in post-secondary admissions. Then we'll actually hear from a panel of grads themselves. We'll hear about their experiences as they successfully applied to post-secondary, and then they moved on to career and family life. And we'll hear how home ed benefited them. Patty will join us again for a presentation on the post-secondary admissions process and how your student can succeed at that. We'll then hear from a panel of parents who've negotiated the post-secondary process. And finally, we'll conclude with a panel of post-secondary admissions counselors representing universities, colleges, and the trades to hear how they deal with home-educated applicants. I'm sure that many of you have questions you will have questions as the seminar proceeds, so feel free to type those into the chat at any time, and we'll try to answer those. We'll answer as many as we can as we go along. And for those who don't get your questions answered tonight or who are watching the seminar at a later date, please go to the homeschool.today website and send your questions through that. Well, let's get started. Patty Marler lives in the greater Edmonton area. She's been a longtime leader in the homeschool movement and has graduated her 4 children who have all gone on to post-secondary education and careers. Patty's going to talk now about how to thrive through the high school years. So why don't you take it away, Patty? And I think I might need to unmute you. Sorry, let me find you here. We've lost our participants.
There we go. I think I am unmuted now.
Excellent. Thanks,
okay.
Patty.
Great. Well, thank you, Peter. Peter's right. Home educating has been such an amazing way to live life. And as I was considering how to share with you the idea of thriving in homeschooling, I thought maybe what I'd do is just begin by talking about some of our homeschool experiences and sharing just some reflections and some memories that I have, because I think that might be the best way to make it so that you have an idea of what homeschooling through high school might look like. So I remember discovering Euclid math online and not really knowing what that was. I remember studying English history with our children and learning about the Magna Carta and never having had any clue what Magna Carta was prior to home educating, and thinking, how could I not have known this? And now our kids have discovered this. I remember discussing elections and my kids bringing up issues and us talking about them and having my kids call the candidates with their thoughts and their questions. I remember crying over physics questions that I didn't know the answers to, that I didn't know how to help my kid with, and her crying even more because of my help. I remember the worldview discussions that we had where we talked about how different people believe different things. And I remember the discussions that we had with our children's friends and with their parents, and us talking about what all this meant and how different people think about issues. I remember significantly opportunities to model conflict resolution, and listening to Gordon Ramsay's talk about finances, and then us talking about how we should manage our finances and what that looks like, and how our kids should manage their income, what that should look like. I remember saying things that I absolutely, completely should not have said, and then apologizing for them. Sometimes right away, sometimes not till later, but real life needed apologies. I remember sitting on the couch with 3 younger children, and the eldest being way too old to listen to the novels that we were reading aloud. But the image of him was there, hanging around, him leaning on the wall as we read the books aloud. I remember the biology studies that we did where we gathered as a group of homeschool families, several homeschool families together, where we dug into biology and we looked at it together with a group of kids. And I remember thinking, this is amazing. The depth and scope of what we are studying is absolutely incredible and way beyond what I know. And as I was facilitating these kids, I was having to spend a lot of time learning. And then there were days when I spent absolutely no time learning because it wasn't me learning the subject, it was them. But I could just help them to learn on their own. I remember hearing incredible cooking shows that my kids listened to over and over and over again, and me being rewarded with amazing dishes and wondering, how in the world did I have kids who can cook so well when I really don't cook so well? I remember my kids starting university early to try it out, and that making the transition in the next years a little bit easier. I remember homeschool family dances where groups of high school homeschooled kids would spend hours and hours dancing together at these bi-monthly dances that we coordinated. They would come into our backyard in the winter and go outside and practice dance moves and flips in the snow so that they didn't get hurt flipping on the dance floor. I'm remembering studies that focused on the very specific career goals that our kids had. I remember one child playing guitar way more than she would have had time to had she been in any different educational model. But that's where her passion lied. So she played and played and played and played. I remember our kids having to figure out how to balance work and school when they got jobs, and their employers loved them because they were homeschoolers. So they were available when no one else was. But my kids had to figure out how to balance that to make sure that they got everything else done well. Special travels with dad, homeschool youth group, problems. I remember problems. And I remember us dealing with our family's problems. And I remember thinking homeschooling doesn't make us exempt from problems, but what it does do is it allows us to focus on our problems and not other people's or other families' problems. And I think one of my most favorite memories from homeschooling through high school are car discussions. Because when you are trapped in a car with a youth and you shut the radio off, you have some pretty incredible discussions. Discussions about life, personal discussions, questions that they haven't had the opportunity yet to ask, uncomfortable questions. The car, for us, was one of the best places to really connect and to really talk about deep issues. So all of this really just sets the stage for what it looks like to homeschool through high school. It is absolutely wonderful. And it is messy. It is really messy. And sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it hurts you as a parent, and sometimes it hurts you as a kid or your child. But homeschooling through the high school is real life mixed with real good education, and one does not take priority over the other. Home education done together can help develop well-educated and well-grounded young adults who possess common sense, life skills, and a robust education. So how do we thrive in homeschooling? I've set the stage, but now I'm going to talk a little bit more about what does this look like? Well, thriving in homeschooling really is about setting an end goal and striving to achieve it. There's a lot of goals to set, but in this session, we have a short amount of time. So I'm going to focus on career goals. And so I want to encourage you to begin career explorations with your youth. Attend colleges and open houses and career fairs and job fairs with your kids. Expose them to a lot of different options to help them try and figure things out. And consciously look at the people around you. What do they do for their livelihoods? Have your kids set a course so that you can help them fulfill their career goals. Now, that's sometimes easily said because sometimes kids don't know in grade 9 or 10 or even 11 or 12 or more exactly what they want to do. But I still encourage you to set a course that provides for as much opportunity for your children in the future. Being undecided is very common for young people. And it's also very common for them to change their path through the high school years. So even though you have a path to work with, have a path that you're going to focus on, this path will motivate your kids, but sometimes you will veer off into a new course. So how do we keep kids motivated in high school, those youth? Some youth are absolutely motivated by the intrinsic value of learning. They love to learn things and to hear and to grow. And that's amazing. Others need to be motivated by goals. I plan on going into, I desire this. Their career and life plans that students have. And others are more motivated by outcomes. Okay, I want to go on so I can make some money. I want to go finish this so I can go do some of my own things. These are reasons why, how to keep students motivated. But it's important for youth at this stage in their life to transition their motivations to themselves and that they take on their motivation for their education. I have told a number of my kids, if you don't do this, it really does not affect me that much. It doesn't affect me if you don't learn your biology. It doesn't affect me if you don't complete your physics. But it will affect you, and it will affect your options and the things that you can do in your future. And those words were very impactful for several of our children. So I encourage you to develop a high school education plan. First of all, we want to make sure that the plan that we have fulfills the legal requirements in the province where you live. So take a look at the provincial laws and figure out what is required in your province. A summary of information can be found at homeschool.today in one of the frequently asked questions called, "Is homeschooling legal in Canada?" More details are available from HSLDA, Homeschool Legal Defense Association, on their members' website. More details on exactly what's required. I encourage you to set your program plan to pursue excellence in academics and in all endeavors. Have your students strive for excellence. Have your program plan developed to strive for excellence. So what do we focus on in high school? Well, I encourage you to develop a 3 or a 4-year high school plan, or depending on how old your kids are. If your kids only have 2 years left, then I encourage you to develop a 2-year plan. But a plan provides structure for your students, and it also allows them to move forward when they are finished a component, or it allows them to slow down and take a break. But it provides them with a framework within which to work that can be very helpful for high school students. A program should always be strong in your first language: writing, reading, spelling. English or French language is very important no matter what career, no matter what pathway your student goes on to. So make sure that your child spends time essay writing, report writing, writing letters, learning how to write well. The course subjects that you're going to emphasize will really depend on the academic career pursuits and pathway that you set out for your kids. Some of those course subjects, math, history, science, or maybe one or all of the sciences, which ones you focus on will be dependent on your student. And again, pursue excellence. So provide opportunities for students to go well beyond their potential, what you may think is their potential in academic and endeavors. I like to hold the bar really high, and then if my kids fall a little bit, they still achieve at a very high level. So where do we, where do we go to find good homeschool curriculum? Well, homeschool.today has excellent education resources. We have a listing of resource providers who can chat with you about what resources may be good in your situations, the different goals of your families, the different plans that your student has will all be discussed with the resource provider, and they can help you choose individual curriculum or program that may work for you. So there's different ways that you can approach high school as well. You may be looking at independent learning, where your child is given the materials and does all the work at home on their own, with you there to assist in terms of finding resources and helping them or encouraging them or learning alongside them. So let's talk about an example, a high school example of biology. There is some amazing biology homeschool curriculum. There's amazing homeschool curriculum, period, that's available in all subjects. Well, let's imagine that you could look at a Bob Jones University homeschool biology program, maybe an Apologia program. There's lots of other ones. These are just two that I'm showing in this example. And then you end up deciding, I'm going to choose the Apologia one for whatever reason. Maybe you've discussed it with some friends, or you've discussed it with the program provider. Well, the program provider can help you build that program so that it is going to work well. You not only will have the textbook, but then you will also have the dissection kit that they'll help you build. They'll encourage you to look at the anatomy coloring book that complements the curriculum. They may encourage you to take a look at the microscope kit if you have a microscope. And then looking at if your child learns auditorily instead of mostly by textbook, you may use the MP3 player, and then maybe the notebook that you provide. Again, these resource providers can help you build that program. Some of you may decide that you want a little help with this, so you may also choose to add on a program provider helping you by offering the program through some of the courses that they offer. So for example, and I'm not trying to pick out programmers or anything, but the Tree of Life will offer courses. So you could take this advanced biology course through a facilitator with Tree of Life, one of the resource providers. Or you may decide to go right to the publisher, who also suggests 3 different pathways that you may choose to study this biology, maybe a self-paced course or an online class or the video on demand. So they have options for classrooms or just using their video material. You may decide not to do that and that you just want to maybe use online programs. And if you go back to our resource providers here under the free resources, you can find programs such as the Khan Academy, which will have opportunities for you to look at the videos that they provide on biology in this instance. There are some programs, high school programs, where you can actually get post-secondary course credit while you are in high school. So it's like a double bonus. Your student learns the material, but then they may also learn credit for post-secondary. They can do that through advanced placement programs. So AP courses are high school courses that offer post-secondary credits. Most universities in US and Canada will award credit for advanced coursework taken in high school, which allows students to skip introductory courses on a given subject and thereby save time and money. Who doesn't want to study a course in high school and then not have to take that course in their first year of university? This is an amazing opportunity. And over 2.2 million students in over 131 countries have taken AP exams, and 3,800 universities have accepted those scores. So this is a really amazing way to look at some of your high school programming, especially for that final year, grade 12. So like I said, many universities will have separate admissions tracks for students who took AP courses and then scored at a certain level. The results of the test can be used for admission if the score is high enough, and again, the student granted course credits. Modernstates.org offers AP courses for free to students. The courses are taught by Ivy League professors online. The curriculum is provided for free, and only the fee that's associated with writing the exam, that's the only fee for the whole course and program. So Modern States offers all of the AP programs, and you could go, this is amazing. This is only a couple years old. I wish I would have had this available. Some of these programs, not all of them, but some of them I may have benefited significantly. Remember the crying physics questions? Probably I would have used it for that. AP details, I'm just going to give you some of those. AP exams are written once a year on the same date and time in every location, so that every student around the world is writing them at the exact same time. Students have to be registered for them in a location where the program is offered, and there are many locations across Canada and the US that offer the exams. So that's the first way to obtain post-secondary credit while you're in high school. Another way is for a student to take open study. Sorry, I wrote programs, but it should be open study courses. So many post-secondary institutions will allow students to take individual courses, and there is no age limit on those courses. So for example, I would have had several, actually, most of our children took individual open studies programs when they were in their final year of high school. And so every one of them had some university credit by the time they started post-secondary. Developing a specialized plan. So we have all of our core material, but in homeschooling, you also get to specialize on things that are very important to you and to your student. You may have a student focused on music or athletics or their artistic goals, so they may spend an exceptional amount of time in those pursuits. You have time to work on life skills. Remember the cooking students? Oh my goodness, the life skills that are developed at home are absolutely amazing in home educated students. Financial wisdom you can impart, worldview understanding, discussions and courses on worldview, faith development, work experience, volunteer or missions focuses during the high school years. Those are all very specialized activities that kids at home get more opportunity to be involved in than kids who have a much more structured day. Homeschool students often learn to learn very independently, and that sets them up very well for their high school years. This is also an amazing time to transition your youth into adulthood by giving them more and more responsibility as they grow. So when they are ready to leave the home, they really are very ready and prepared for that. And you can be confident that they will thrive in their years away from your home. And one of the best things about homeschooling is maintaining close family bonds and relationships. One of the stories that I didn't share was a story about our son taking his sister, who was 8 years younger than him, on a 12-hour car ride just so she could be with him. Develop your plan around these areas that are very important to you. You will ensure that your child has a well-rounded education and has a solid start for not only their post-secondary, but for their adult years. Get help when needed. We don't have to do it all on our own. It's okay to hire a tutor, a regular tutor, or an occasional tutor as you need it. We may not know it all. That physics was not something I enjoyed. And so we explored hiring a tutor. Group learning with other homeschool students can be a wonderful learning opportunity. The kids, in our instance, there were, we did several different times, studied several different courses or programs where we would have maybe 8 or 10 kids come together once a week, study, do most of the learning at home on their own. But that once a week was a wonderful time for learning. It kept us focused on our time, which was really important because we had to live within a structured time. And it also allowed for those routine connections with their homeschool friends. Enlist the help of others, other parents, other friends, mentors. It's okay for you to call on others for help. And focus on your plan, but modify it as it's necessary. One of our students went through the complete 4-year plan, was completely on track with where we had set to go, and in the last semester decided to change their route. That's okay. It still helped to keep us focused and solid, and still provide an excellent education. Again, those discussions are very important. Plan on having good, which really means difficult, conversations with your children. Plan on being challenged in your politics. Teach them important things about politics. Teach them how to vote. Not necessarily who to vote for, but how to make those decisions. Have difficult conversations about current events, about faith, about religion, about relationships. Those are so important. So plan on having difficult conversations. Will there be gaps in your kids' education? Sure. There are gaps in every kid's education. You can teach them well, but you absolutely cannot teach them everything that they will need to know. But it's like when you teach a child to fish, when you give a child a fish, they will eat for a day. When you teach a child to fish, they can live for a lifetime. That's what we're doing here in homeschooling, is we're teaching our kids how to fish. Most home-educated students involved in rigorous programs can fill in those gaps themselves. So homeschooling is an incredible way to do high school. You set your youth up well for post-secondary studies, you set your youth up well for work, and you set your youth up well for life. If you want more information and more details on homeschooling through high school, there's another workshop available on the homeschool.today website, one of the virtual workshops called Homeschooling Junior High and High School Youth. That is an hour-long workshop that you may be interested in taking a look at. So there we go. That is what we have.
Fantastic, Patty. Well, I'm just going to give Patty a moment to prepare her next presentation here on portfolios. And I'm going to make a brief plug for our key sponsor for this seminar right now. The Homeschool Legal Defense Association, or HSLDA, is the national organization serving homeschool families. HSLDA, as the name suggests, provides legal advice and protection for member families, as well as access to insurance for homeschooling events, expert homeschooling advice, as well as a unique digital library filled with wholesome ebooks and audiobooks. And those are for kids. There's also books for adults as well. You'll also receive the Homeschool with HSLDA magazine, which is, I think that's showing up in the screen there pretty nicely. It's filled with useful and encouraging articles, and I know our members appreciate that. HSLDA has been serving Canadians for 30 years now, and if you'd like to join HSLDA, memberships are available both monthly and on an annual basis, and you can find those at hslda.ca, hslda.ca. As promised, Patty will now give us a brief overview of portfolios, which may well be an important element in your post-secondary applications. So why don't you take it away, Patty? And I think I might have to unmute you again. Is that right? Pressing the button. There we go.
There we go. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen again right away. Homeschool portfolios. Okay, so what is a homeschool high school portfolio? Well, a homeschool high school portfolio is a collection of information that outlines the education that your student has completed. It's going to include information on the coursework that they've done and the associated grades that either you or someone else has given them. It's going to describe the rigor of the student's education, which includes the scope and sequence of the program that they've taken. And it's going to describe the extracurricular high school activities that are significant for your students' future. So why create a portfolio? Well, a portfolio is an important tool for home educated students who have not chosen a traditional online or traditional school way of educating, but they've chosen, or you've chosen, an alternative pathway for them. For example, the kids may not have any government curriculum or government credits or a government diploma. And so this portfolio will be very important in helping them to get into post-secondary. Now, again, each province is different. So some provinces may allow for this sort of homeschooling. Quebec in particular may not, does not allow for that. So it's important that you're familiar with the laws in your province. So the post-secondary admission is the portfolio use for post-secondary admission has been done a lot over the course of the last decade or two. And there are several universities and institutions that will accept them as and actually have a post-secondary pathway for portfolios. Another good reason to create a portfolio is that it can be a record of what your student has done in case of investigations. And what we're talking about here today are high school portfolios, but portfolios for younger students are also really important to have, so that if there's ever an investigation or someone ever looks into your homeschooling, you have a record of what's been done in your education. So portfolios are very important. And finally, it can be used to help your student to write a resume. You have all the information there. So it's really easy to write a resume when everything is in one spot. So what does a portfolio look like? Well, when you start, it may just look like a file folder where you put all your interesting documents, things you want to keep. Or it may look like a binder, which is what mine eventually evolved to. Remember, we have 4 kids who we did this with. So what it looks like when we started and what it looks like by the 4th child ended up being very different. But it's a place to keep a collection of all your materials. I have heard of families who were trying to get into post-secondary institutions and required, for example, writing samples of their students in order for the institution to take a look at them. And it was such a lot of work to try and go back and find writing samples. Well, I have all of that right there in my portfolio. When my child does a piece of good work, I just pop it in a sleeve in the portfolio, and there it is. Organize it later, but right now it's just all thrown together. This may also be what your portfolio looks like. It may be collected in digital form, but always remember to back up your portfolio so that you don't lose it. So begin preparing your portfolio for high school in about grade 9 or 10. The grade really doesn't matter. What matters is the level of material that your student is completing or covering. So if you think what they're doing is high school worthy, then record it in the high school portfolio, no matter when it is done. So what do you include in a high school portfolio? Well, transcripts and marks. So you're going to keep track of how well your student has done. So transcripts of grades. You may have done some courses from other places. So you may have been issued transcripts from school boards or the government, but you may have done your own transcript in addition or solo. You may just have a transcript of your student's work that you have prepared. Those open studies courses would generate a transcript from the institution where your child was. So you may have a transcript from various post-secondary institutions, depending on where your child took those individual courses, open studies courses. You may have some equivalency exam marks that you took. So you may have done the course on your own and just gone somewhere and challenged the exam, or gone to a university and challenged their equivalency exam. Again, the institution where you did that would generate a transcript. And then you may have individual course marks or certificates or evaluations from programs that you've done, say as a high school sunlight program, or maybe that biology program that we were looking at. Maybe Apologia or Tree of Life created a transcript for you. So that's where the transcripts are. So here's a sample transcript that I would have on a page in one of the sleeves in the portfolio. It's going to outline the course and the grade that's given. Now, because I'm a homeschooler, someone may look at it and go, did you just assign those marks? Well, when I do my kids' transcripts, I always do an extra one that is the transcript with rationale. So for English, we may have done a writing course and then done some editing work and spelling. And based on all of those things, I assigned a mark of 83. Social studies, well, we did that study of England that I was telling you about. And we did all these DVD series. We did some classical readings. We dialogued, did some reports. And then we did some American history, some civics work, some World War II studies. So based on all of that, I assigned a mark. So this would be the rationale. So if someone ever said, well, how did you come up with that? I can show them how I came up with that. So I would have both of those in my students' portfolio. So if we go back to that biology course that we talked about doing, well, in the portfolio, I'm going to have this information that outlines the marks that my student maybe would have achieved, or actually in this case did achieve, on the unit tests that were taken. And so I kept track of that, and I kept a final mark. Then this student actually went in and did an equivalency test at a post-secondary institution where there was a desire to get into a program. So that transcript is also right there, and I have this on one sleeve on one page. Now, so that's right there. So what I want you to notice, which happened to be a coincidence, although it's not really, this is the mark that I assigned, the 81.4 based on her work. I want you to look at the mark that she actually got on the equivalency. It was 81%. Note the similarity between that. That I never expected it to be quite that close, but having this together actually provides very strong assurance for the other marks that I assigned for this student, because it shows that the mark that I gave was very consistent with a mark that the institution gave for a final exam. Now, to finish off this sleeve, I would have made a certificate for this child that showed that she did this work. One final thing, we did this as a group of people studying together, and one of the parents happened to be a doctor. So we had her sign all of the certificates. And can you imagine how many students get the benefit of studying biology and having a doctor be there every week to walk with you? Other ways of tracking marks, here's just a couple other ways. Other details that you can include, your academic course subject, syllabus, sample questions, unit tests, and course certificates. So reading lists, dated writing samples. So for example, back to that biology course again, I would have a picture of the textbook, and I would have put the table of contents in there. So if anyone's wondering what was covered, I have that very readily available. I kept a reading list every time one of the kids would read a work of significance, not casual reading, but a work of significance, whether it's literature, complete readings, pieces of readings, books on tape that they listen to, Shakespeare movies, plays watched, great speeches. I would just record it somewhere, and then at the end of their homeschooling years, we put this into a cumulative list. Here's just some other examples. The story of England that we talked about, here's what we actually did in it. And then other training, here's a music festival certificate. Here's some swimming awards. Letters of reference. These were helpful. So this was just an email. She works hard and never complains and always willing to work. This was just from her coach. This was from an uncle. Thank you very much for the help you gave me. I was impressed by the way you followed instructions and completed a task. That's great information for a resume and a cover letter and a portfolio. She's a dedicated young woman who's very dependable. So when people ever wrote emails or letters, I always kept those for our kids. Lots of other information that you can keep in the portfolio, extracurricular courses, volunteer certificates. Anytime our children volunteered anywhere, I would ask the organization if they would mind just creating a certificate for it. Music adjudication, sports achievements and awards, fine artwork, some of their artwork or special achievements or recognitions. As well, any formal testing, specialized projects, oratory workshops like speechcraft, their resume once they create one, special needs assessments that may be helpful when your student goes to post-secondary, any information that may be relevant at some point. And then when you go to actually use it, put a cover page on that sort of focuses on what your child hopes to achieve. Maybe write a cover letter where your child describes what they're hoping to achieve. Categorize your portfolio and make sure that you may have different portfolios for different programs that your student applies for, because each one focuses on something else. Always remember to keep the original portfolio and only submit copies. This is a sample of the organization in one of the portfolios. So just as your student is unique, their portfolio is also going to be unique and contain information that reflects them and their specific high school education. And finally, the homeschooling portfolio is an absolute treasure. It is a keepsake that you will love for a very long time and will find very useful. For further information on portfolios, HSLDA, their member site has a lot of information, a guide, workshops, templates, and so you can find that there. So there we go.
Thanks, Patty. That's great.
Okay.
I'm just pulling up our next panel here. We're going to be well, it's our first panel, actually. These are all people who've homeschooled through the high school years, and we're going to hear about their experiences. Let me just find the last panelist here. Sorry, we've got a long list. So, okay, so here we go. And I can see Sean Ansel, he's in Alberta. Megan Zelinka is in Ontario. And Stephen Ferris is also in Ontario. And all three of our panel, homeschooled through high school. They've had some very interesting post-secondary education, as well as pursuing careers in their chosen fields. So, but rather than me giving a lengthy introduction to each one, I'm going to ask them to tell the story of their own journey. So let's hear from Stephen first, if we can, please. Stephen, tell us a little of your journey after homeschooling through high school. Where and what did you study for your post-secondary education? And how well did home education prepare you for post-secondary?
Thanks, Peter. So after homeschooling, I went to Western and studied music education there, and then went to Heritage Seminary for a master's in theology, and then to Fanshawe College for music industry arts. So that was the places that I studied. We did like a correspondence with a school in the States. So I actually had a US grade 12, even though I was homeschooled here, which worked out well for universities. When I went to seminary, they had no problem there. When I went to Fanshawe, they couldn't figure out how I could have been living in Canada. And yeah, it was weird. They couldn't wrap their head around how it all worked. And then even though I had a music degree, they wanted my high school diploma to get in. So that was an interesting journey. But yeah, that's what happened with me. In terms of homeschooling preparing me, the biggest thing with university and with life is you have to teach yourself and you have to keep on learning. And so in that regard, I think homeschooling prepared me really well. As with everything, there's always gaps and things. I wish I'd studied that more. I wish my parents had taught me this better or something. But all in all, I'm very glad that I was homeschooled.
Excellent. Thanks, Steve. Megan, can I turn to you next? What was your post-secondary track like, and how well did home education prepare you for that?
Okay, well, I'm a lawyer now, so I started in political science for a BA. I went to a school in the States, and I ended up transferring to do a political science BA program in Canada. So I had considered doing a master's in international relations, but I ended up in law school at Osgoode Hall, York University in Toronto. Homeschooling, I mean, it was a fantastic preparation. And, I never doubted that it would be. Um, I especially valued how much homeschooling had trained me in self-study and in planning out my workload. So when I entered the classroom, first of all, it was a totally new and exciting experience because I had been homeschooled from kindergarten all the way through to grade 12. And so I was just so excited to be taught by a teacher, and really enjoyed the lecture format. It was all new and exciting. Um, but I think the biggest thing for me was how much homeschooling prepared me to work independently and to be self-motivated. I had absolutely no trouble managing my academic workload in university.
Excellent. Thank you. Sean, you're in Alberta. I know you're in the trades, but tell us about your educational journey up to the present day. How did that go for you, and how well did home education prepare you?
Yeah, so I started, I finished grade 12, and then I took a year off to finish my summer job and also do the entrance exam for Alberta trades. So there's different levels of that, and I just did the highest one. So I studied for that when I was 19, and I passed that. And then I applied for several jobs, and no one was really hiring at the time. So I accepted a laboring position at a machine shop, and I worked there for a couple months as a laborer and shipper receiver, and then asked if I could partake in the trades and stuff there at the shop, and they told me they had an open spot for machining. And so I applied for that and got my blue book and went to NAIT for 4 years and graduated in 2016. And it was good.
Great. And for those outside Alberta, NAIT is Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, correct?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, yeah, excellent. Okay. All right. And let's go in the same order with the second question. What are you doing now career-wise? Steve Ferris, what are you doing career-wise now?
So right now I am teaching private music lessons out of my house. We've got that set up, and I was the music director at a church, on a little bit of a break from that right now, and I am the maintenance coordinator at a local business.
Awesome. And you're actually in your music studio at the moment. I think we can tell.
That's right. Yeah.
That's great, or at least part of it, because it's a little bigger than that. All right, Megan, what are you doing career-wise? I know the answer to this, by the way, but go ahead and tell us.
So I work with Peter. I'm a lawyer at HSLDA Canada. I've been at HSLDA since 2017. Where I am working there supporting the homeschooling community. So before joining HSLDA, I spent several years running my own practice. So I represented parents in child protection proceedings, and I also represented families going through a family law dispute. So I did family litigation. At HSLDA, I work with members who are calling in with various legal issues. And I would also work with lobbying governments about education legislation that would impact homeschoolers. And I've also done presentations to local bar associations in Toronto, essentially discussing how homeschooling works, what the law is around homeschooling, and how it relates to the cases that they see in family and child protection law. So lots of homeschooling education law topics.
Excellent. And Sean, how has your career gone since you finished education at NAIT and got your trade certificate?
It's good. Yeah, I'm still at the same machine shop, working as a journeyman. I'm working on a lot of larger machines and doing what a lot of the older gentlemen are doing that are retiring soon.
Okay.
So that's a lot of fun, working on stuff that's like machines from World War II and stuff. So
really? Well, that is very interesting. Yeah. Can you tell us about one of those projects briefly?
Yeah, we are a pump repair shop. So we work on all kinds of pumps, from municipal pumps to any industrial pumps that you can think of: oil, gas, power generating, mining, forestry, farming. So yeah, we kind of do it all. It's a lot of fun.
You're keeping the economy moving.
I'm doing my best.
All right, that's great. And let's go back to Stephen. Stephen, another question here. Are you glad you were home educated? And did you find that we already asked you if you found home education prepared you well for post-secondary, but what about for life in general? How do you value your home education?
Yeah, I would say it's been the most valuable for life because, like I said, the biggest thing is to keep learning and to be like teaching yourself, right? Not expecting someone else to always spoon feed you everything, but to be um, figuring out your own goals and your own path and learning what you need to know. And I think homeschooling really well for that.
Excellent. Megan, were you glad you were home educated, and did it prepare you well for life?
I was very glad. I had an excellent homeschooling experience. I think what my parents really excelled in was balancing academics and the social life that homeschoolers are tired of hearing about, but it is a very valid it's a very valid point, right? So what they did, I think, is they did a good job with both of those things. They made sure we had a lot of friends, homeschooled friends and friends who were in school. And I was very confident that I was getting a top quality education. So by the age of 14 or 15, I was paying attention to that and I really cared about it. I knew I wanted to go to university. Um, and in my family, there was never a question of whether homeschooling would hold you back from university. There was an expectation you either went to university or you chose a solid alternative in the trades or some other program, but you were expected, like, nope, you're going to use the education that we're giving you and go somewhere with it. And I think that expectation, really supported my confidence. Like I was confident that I could get into the programs that I was interested in, and I was able to do that.
Excellent. And Sean, how well did home education prepare you for life beyond school?
I think it did a good job. I definitely learned a lot when I first joined the machine shop. It's a very different world than like a family setting. But for the most part, it was really good. And I don't know. Anyway, it was good. It prepared me well. Life is good.
Great. Thanks, Sean. Well, Sean, I know you were married recently, so I don't think there are any kids that you're homeschooling at the moment, but both Megan and Stephen, you've got children. Are you homeschooling at the moment?
Yes, I am. There, okay, go ahead. I'll wait.
Sorry,
Stephen,
I should have picked. Yeah, Megan, go
Yeah,
ahead.
you go ahead. You started first.
Okay, all right. So yes, I am. We're homeschooling our girls. We've tried a few years at a fantastic private school, but we did end up homeschooling, and we plan to do it long term now. So my husband was not homeschooled, and what he's observed after seeing, we're on our 4th year of homeschooling now. In his eyes, the greatest benefit to homeschooling is how it makes the best use of our kids' time, and I think he really drew my attention to this. I had never thought about it in this way before. But in a family like ours, where both parents are working outside the home, children can be seen as sort of another ball to juggle, right? How do you deal with childcare so that you can work because your time is so valuable? And you don't really think of the kids' time as being valuable. It's easy to forget that. And I think what we've realized through our homeschooling experience is their time is just as valuable as ours. They can learn things that would take me twice as long to pick up now at this age with their young brains. And we feel that homeschooling cuts out the time that inevitably gets wasted when you're in a large classroom environment. And we see our kids using that saved time to take on so much more than they were able to do when they were in that private school, wonderful as it was. So we're thrilled with how it's going, and we plan to do it long term.
Fantastic. Stephen.
Yeah, we're homeschooling. We have 3 kids, and they've been homeschooled from the beginning. I noticed right away once their friends started going to school the difference, and so we often hear, socialization, that's a problem for homeschoolers. So I would actually say socialization is one of the major benefits for homeschoolers. And seeing that, and then the education, and my wife does a fantastic job, and I'm really happy with the way they're doing, and yeah, we'll keep on going.
Fantastic. And Sean, I as I said, I know there aren't any kids yet, but maybe when they do come along, are you inclined to think that homeschooling might be something you and your wife want to pursue?
I'm open to it, but that's only half the team here, so
Absolutely.
might be some convincing. We'll see.
Okay.
There's
Well,
lots
we
of
don't want
time
to
for that
cause any
still.
marital strife, but well, I want to thank all three of you so much for taking time to participate with us tonight. And I really hope that what you've had to say will be an encouragement to a lot of parents listening tonight and who view the seminar in days and weeks to come, that they will also see, not just that this is something that can theoretically be done, but there's a wonderful end product. There are people who are making a difference in the world. They're building the world. They're helping to train the next generation as well, and doing a fantastic job at it. So thank you all three, Megan, Stephen, and Sean. And we'll move on to our next segment now, which is back to Patty. And if you guys want to duck out, you're quite welcome to. I've got to find Patty on the list again here.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Megan. Okay. Give me 10 seconds, everybody. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, you're back, Patty. Okay, so we're now going to have a little talk from you on applying to post-secondary. And do I have to turn your video on there? I'm not sure if you.
I think you do.
Yeah, okay, sorry about that. There we go.
Oh,
There we are.
there we go.
Okay, great. Okay, I'll duck out and let you take over. So right now we're going to hear about applying to post-secondary. So getting some practical details on that. Not only applying to post-secondary, but getting in. That's the key. Go take it away, Patty.
That's right. Okay. So I'm just going to share my screen again. Okay, so how do we get these wonderfully home educated students into post-secondary? Well, there is more than one way to obtain post-secondary admission. The regular brick and mortar school paperwork. So what I encourage you to do as a homeschooling parent with your student is to understand the admissions policies of the institution and specifically the faculty that your student is interested in. Admissions policies may have an influence on how you approach your home education through the high school years. Different programs within the same institution may even have different requirements for admission. So for example, Sean was talking about his program offered at NAIT, which, by the way, I want to tell you, Sean did not say that he's actually a Red Seal machinist, which is the top level of achievement in terms of the program that he studied. So that's that humility that sometimes comes out in home educated students. And I know Sean well because he was he did some stuff with my kids as well. So he did very well in school. So the program for the machining program is very different than the program that another friend applied for, which was business by Open Studies, which is very different than another program, which is electronics engineering technology, which is very different than the medical technologist program that another student wanted to apply for. Each of them had different requirements and different admissions. So the key is planning and all of those programs that I just described at that one institution, all of them had students. All of them had students, homeschool students, who were accepted into those programs using alternate pathways. So that is very wonderful. So there's a variety of methods for getting into post-secondary education. you can do the school or the online route, where you have, as a homeschool student, you take programmings that are offered through the schools, and you end up getting some final marks with a provincial transcript. So for example, BC, the Yukon, Alberta students, you can get provincial courses and receive provincial credits and marks. BC Yukon students can get the Dogwood certificate. Alberta students can get an Alberta program of studies. And I know in Alberta, you can use your own material and challenge the courses in order to be able to obtain those marks. And it's possible that other provinces, I don't know the details of every province, but it's quite possible that other provinces have that as well. And CEGEP in Quebec has been accepting home educators since 2017, since their legislation changed. There's also the parent-directed route, where people use maybe a specialized home education admissions policies, or use their portfolio in order to get in. When you are submitting a tailored portfolio for submission, you're going to want to select only the relevant materials when you submit your portfolio. Like I said before, submit a color or a digital copy of your portfolio, consider hand delivering it, and keep your original document. Some universities have specialized home education portfolio admissions. Some require a little bit of advocacy. Every one of our students who's gone into a program, even to a university that said they don't take kids outside the normal route, we've gotten them in. And it just requires a little bit of work, a little bit of consistency, a lot of planning, like I said, but it's very possible. So with the open studies method is a very doable way of getting into homeschooling. So I know of students who've taken a number of open studies courses in their high school years, 2 or 3, so that by the time it comes for them to get a typical time to get into university, they actually already have 3 courses under their belt. They're able to take another 2 or 3 open studies courses, so that by the time they enter that second year, they're actually equivalent and on par in terms of courses taken with all the other kids that they're in school with. So open studies is a really wonderful way to get into homeschool or into post-secondary programs. And evidence, they use that evidence of positive marks in those open study courses when they're considering admission into the program. So who does this? Well, McGill does it. A student can take a limited number of individual courses. NATE does that. They have different ways to use to admit students. That's the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, a trade school and university in Alberta. Red River College also has a way of using transfer credits to get students in. There are a whole list of different universities. If you go to University Admissions in Canada, there's a whole list of different ways of getting in, different universities that will use open studies. So check out the institution that you're looking at. I can't speak to every institution in my own province, let alone across the country, but you can do your research and take a look at what some of those alternative pathways are. Another way is the College Board method of admission. So when we were talking about those AP courses, those AP exams, the high school courses that you take that could give you university credits. Well, are those really recognized in Canada? Well, let's take a look. The Alberta government on their website says shows how you can use advanced placement for getting into post-secondary courses. And they also talk about IB programs. The University of New Brunswick talks about applicants who have written AP exams may be eligible for advanced credit and admissions. Dalhousie in Nova Scotia, select AP courses completed with national exams with a result of 4 or 5 are eligible for transfer credits. And again, if you go to that university admissions in Canada, it talks about AP exams and the application of them at different universities. So yes, they're widely recognized and accepted by many institutions across the country. So there's also less frequently used College Board methods of admission, the SAT or ACTs, IB programs, or CLEP tests. The details can be found at the College Board website. Some of them, SAT, ACT, are used by a few Canadian universities and colleges, but you're going to want to make sure you do your research on the institution to make sure that they will accept it. IB programs, not as common in Canada, but we saw on the Alberta website that Alberta is using them. So again, check your institution. CLEP programs, and if we go, those are used for applying to US credits. And if we go back to this Modern States org, they offer AP courses as well as CLEP courses. Post-secondary also will consider prior learning as potential credits. Now, for our students who are young, this may not be quite as applicable, but transfer credits may be something of significance. So you know how I was saying, some of my kids took a course from university in their high school years, and then they chose a different institution to go to once they did go to post-secondary. But those university credits that they had from the one institution transferred over to the institution of choice that they were now in. And there are some strictly online universities that will have courses that you can transfer. For example, Athabasca University has a lot of transfer credits. So if you are trying to apply for a post-secondary program of study, make sure you speak to the institution. We spent a number of days going to an institution, beginning with the registrar, expecting a no. I expect a no from the university registrar when I go in and there's no post-secondary admissions policy, because that's their job. And that's the policy that they have to stick with. They're going to say no. So my child and I will go in, speak to the register, give them the spiel, and they say no. And then we say, can I speak with your supervisor? And then we go and we speak to the supervisor 2 hours or the next day, and we get no. So then we go and ask to speak to the manager or the person who's responsible for the program. And at some point, every one of my children has been admitted into or considered for the programs that they're looking at. At one of the post-secondary open houses, I was chatting with my daughter, and a man actually came up and said, "Is there something I can do to help you?" And I said, "Well, no, not right now, but we homeschool and we're not sure we're going to be able to get in. And he actually gave me his business card, and he was the president of the university. And he said, "If you have any problems, you come and see me." So I kept that card, and I was really sad when my child decided not to go to that institution, because I really wanted to advocate with that president of that institution. But there's lots of ways for us to do it, and to do it well. And when we do it well, it not only opens doors for us, but it opens the doors for future students into those institutions. So for more information on post-secondary and high school and things you can do with your kids to help them get into high school, there's that virtual workshop again at homeschool.today, another workshop. Yeah, and that is getting into post-secondary institutions. So Peter, I am not sure if you are still there.
Yes, thank you very much. Sorry, we had some real technical difficulties there. I see we've had our other panelists join us, which is great. And so what I'm going to do now is just introduce our next panel. So it consists of Patty Marler, who we've been hearing from tonight, and also another parent who has traveled a similar road to Patty, Linda Karn, who's in Manitoba. She homeschooled her kids out in Saskatchewan, but I think she's moved to Manitoba just to be near the grandchildren, if I'm correct. I'll unmute you there too, Linda. See if that works.
Peter, you are now muted yourself, so you may just want to unmute it.
Thank you. The software is playing games tonight. Okay, so and I'll just make a quick note for everybody who might have missed a little bit of the presentation that was interrupted. We will be posting this on the homeschool.today website. So if you missed just even a few minutes and you want to catch it later, you can do that. So don't be disappointed you missed it now. You can catch it later. Okay, so first question for our panelists, and this panel again is focused on the idea that we have some parents who've gone through this process successfully. They've seen success with their kids, and we'd like to hear what their experience was really like. So I'm going to start with Linda with the first question. Linda, why don't you tell us about the children you've graduated? What did they go on to do in terms of their post-secondary learning, and what are they doing now?
Okay. Thank you. I'm glad to be back. I just got back in the nick of time after being knocked off. I have 3 children that were homeschooled from birth to high school completion, and they didn't receive any high school credits or diplomas at all. Between the 3 of them, they were accepted at 9 different universities in 3 different provinces. The oldest went to the University of Winnipeg and took a business degree. Then she was accepted at the University of Saskatchewan for the Masters of Accounting program. And then she wrote her CPA exams and passed those. So she's almost a chartered professional accountant, just has some work hours to put in, and she'll be there. The next one is in a music degree. She's finished 3.5 years. Currently at the University of Regina. And the third one is just finished her first year at Canadian Mennonite University, also doing a business degree, possibly minoring in music. But she's having second thoughts about what she wants to do and is now looking into possibly trades and electrician.
Excellent. That's great. Thanks, Linda. Patty, tell us about the children you've graduated. What do they go on to study, and what are they doing now?
Okay, well, I want to just say that I always used to find this session incredibly encouraging for myself when I heard about other kids. And I never ever expected that I'd be one of the people that would be speaking about the wonderful things that happen when you homeschool, because my kids were just regular. And so I thought my kids are never going to do all these amazing things. And so my first kid really struggled with being our first experimental homeschool child and had a lack of career focus. But he did a NAIT radio and production course in his last year of high school, then went to the University of Manitoba took a 2-year electronics engineering technology diploma course, and then went on to get his 3rd class power engineering, and is working as a 2nd class power engineer in a fertilizer production plant. Some really interesting things about that kid is that, remember that focus and motivation. He went on to win the Canadian College Athletic Association Academic All-Canadian Award for, it's the most prestigious student athlete honor, which epitomized the commitment to academic success and athletic achievement. So I say I am kind of bragging, but he's a regular kid. He was a really regular kid, and it's just really exciting to me, the things like listening to Linda and her kids. It's just amazing. Then another child studied a Bachelor of Arts in music, and she's now a manager at the Canadian Contact Center for Scotiabank. Interesting note that she got a scholarship to study music at the Kadai Institute in Hungary for a year. So she studied overseas for a year. I had another child who I would say had difficulties learning, and she went on to get her practical nursing diploma, no high school credits or anything from post-secondary, all a portfolio method, and she's now a practical nurse. And then the 4th child, who is, just finished school, she took a NATE research course, and is now working in retail, but she came a senior lead very fast and has been awarded Employee of the Month 3 times over the course of this year. So regular kids, just, yeah, it's amazing.
That's great. All right. Well, the next question is this. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced in successfully applying for post-secondary opportunities, and how did you overcome them? Linda, can I start with you on that question?
Sure. I'll just tack on. Patty, my kids they were all just regular kids too, just like yours. I didn't think there was anything particularly special, but well, they are special to me, but and they did all get scholarships too, even though they were home educated. Between the 3, I think we got 9 or 10 different scholarships, thousands of dollars. So homeschoolers can do anything that publicly educated kids can do. Yeah, so biggest challenges in successfully applying for post-secondary opportunities. Well, I didn't have, super big challenges because I started researching 3 or 4 years before my oldest went. I did a lot of, I feel I should earn an honorary master's degree in post-secondary entrance because I've just spent hours and hours researching and talking to institutions across the country. My oldest was at first pursuing a scholarship program at a post-secondary. But I had, for my oldest, I had to send in, they accepted the parent-generated transcript, which just contained grade 11 and 12 information on it. I had to send a lot of backup. I found so my overall biggest challenge would be the vast differences in entrance requirements for homeschooled students across the country. Right? If you graduate from a public school, high school diploma, transcript, poof, that's it. But every post-secondary, college, university, trades have a different set of requirements. And I suppose I was nearly pulling my hair out at one point in time trying to figure out, okay.
Well, welcome everyone. Today I have with me Paul Stein from the Saskatchewan.
Sorry,
Sorry about that, Linda.
How do I direct their high school path if I don't know where they're going to end up in the long run? So we did, a fair bit of narrowing that down, and lots of prayer and guidance there. But yeah, so for University of Winnipeg, I had to submit a whole lot of backup. I had to submit the table of contents from many of the textbooks or curriculum that my daughter used, including Math UC. So that they have a really good table of contents. I had to submit samples of the tests and whatnot that she did. So they accepted her for math. And then, okay, you know, acceptance is like February, March, April. Then when you apply for your courses in May, June, there was a hassle getting into math because she didn't have the grade 12 credit, right? That said the prerequisite was the grade 12 credit. So, but then I did more research and found out there's something called a prerequisite waiver. So we had to apply to the math faculty to get this prerequisite waiver for math. So I had to again submit all the same math information I previously submitted to get that approved at the math department level to get her in. And that was only supposed to take a few days to happen, but several days went by and I didn't hear anything. So I contacted someone and they said, oh yeah, it's still in the process. And then I still didn't hear anything back from admissions. So I contacted them and they still hadn't heard anything. So I went to the math department person and knocked on their door or phoned them. And they said, oh, I filled that paper in the day I got it and sent it back. I'm like, oh, okay, well, so-and-so says they didn't get it. So anyways, the whole thing ended up being just an administrative foul up. Okay, so they did sign off the waiver and no problem, but nobody got back to me. The piece of paper got lost. So I would say, make sure you keep following up. Don't just send your paper in or fill in your online form and leave it. Just follow up. And then when you ask a question about your homeschooled child and they give you a no, don't take the first no. Always follow up. Go to somebody else, go above that person and above that person. I can tell you a big long story about a homeschool friend trying to get into U of R, but I don't think there's time for that tonight. Another challenge with my middle daughter, she was a non-writer. She didn't write a single essay at home all through high school. She just was not a writer. Many of you have pencil resistant students. To get into the music program at Ambrose University, they wanted her to write the general SAT, Scholastic Aptitude Test, which was basically math and a general language arts. She could have done it and she would have passed, but she couldn't see the sense of having to write that test to get into a music degree program. So she didn't do it. She did go on to write essays in university and did a great job. And I just say that's the grace of God showing through there, even though she didn't write at homeschool, but she was an avid reader. So my youngest, again, she was a very good writer, but Briarcrest College wanted to see writing samples. We didn't have any because we did a much more relaxed approach to homeschool than Patty did. Didn't use any language arts curriculum, but I knew she was a writer. She did a lot of online blogging. She had a lot of pets. At one point, she wanted to be a veterinarian, and we had a lot of pets at home, and she just loves them and does a great job caring for them. And she would be on various Facebook groups, giving people advice on how to care for their pets, set up their cages, deal with some minor medical issues. And I would read some of her replies to people and I'm thinking, this was great. I mean, she was so clearly, because she just loved the pets, she could get the ideas and thoughts out of her head and onto paper, or the screen, and send off to people. And I suppose I should have printed some of those off and saved them because they were so good. But anyway, Briarcrest, they wanted to see a paper with cited sources, citations on them. So that was no problem. She just wrote a paper on something about music because she loves music and sent that in and check, in she got. So,
Excellent.
yeah. So those were a few challenges.
And Patty, same question for you. What are some of the biggest challenges you faced along the way with the post-secondary admissions process, and how'd you overcome them?
Well, I can say, there's similar stories to Linda, but I remember thinking, watching friends who were doing online programs in high school, or watching kids who were in school and doing different programming, and thinking about You know, some people said, well, why don't you just put them in school and then it's done? And then you don't have to jump through so many hoops. And I thought, yeah, but those kids are really jumping through hoops now. So I thought I can really jump through hoops later, the kind of hoops. I have similar stories like Linda. You know, there's hoops to jump through, there's paperwork that's lost, there's, you know, admissions, people who change and things change. So I can jump through the hoops later and completely find amazing value in our homeschooling, do what we want, focus on the areas that we want, and have an amazing high school education, and not jump then. So I chose to do my jumping not during high school, but afterwards. So as a homeschool mom, like Linda, I have to stay committed to my choices to homeschool through high school to be able to do all that follow-up and advocating and all that kind of stuff. And I jumped through hoops afterwards. And like Linda, everyone has, you know, been successful, takes time and energy. But jumping through those school hoops also takes time and energy. It just depends on when and where you want to expend your energy.
All right, thanks, Patty. One last question for both of you. If you had to do it all over again, knowing what you know now, with respect to the admissions process, are there any things you would have done a little differently the first time around, from the first time around, I should say? Let's start with Linda.
I would say no, Peter, because I did a lot of research early. That seemed to be, and try to narrow down their area of interest and narrow down the school they want to go to or the city they want to go to. That would yeah, and it being an advocate for your student. But no, and I think things change all the time too. So whatever worked for Patty and myself and the grads that spoke already, it might be completely different in a few years' time. So I would just say keep doing the research and listen to what we've done and springboard from there with what you need to do in your house.
Thanks, Linda. How about you, Patty? Are there any lessons learned along the way that you'd like to share with others?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I shared with my son today what I was going to say now. Actually, he shared with me what I was going to say now because I asked him what he would say. And I would have laid out a plan better for our eldest son, our eldest child. I'd say I kind of floundered a little bit. I think we did really great things in this high school, but I think I would have planned it out a little bit more so that there was more structure for him to help motivate him. And it's interesting because that's exactly what he told. I said, if you were to speak as a high school grad, what would you say? And he said basically the same thing. By the time I got to kid number 4, I have most of it figured out and, you know, wish I had 10 more kids because, but having said that, everyone's different and what you do with each one of them is different. So.
All right. Well, thank you both, Linda and Patty. Patty, I'm going to ask you if you wouldn't mind sticking around a little longer because what we're going to do next is we're going to hear from a panel of post-secondary admissions counselors, one from a college, one from a university, and one from the trades. And once we've heard that, we had to record that a little earlier just because of the timing of the seminar. But so I'm going to play that recording. And then after that, I'm hoping that we might have just a few minutes, Patty, to answer a couple of questions that have come in. And so I'm going to encourage you to look through the chat as well and just see if there's a couple you want to answer. And we'll get to that shortly. So for those who ask questions, we're going to try and answer those we can. If you don't get it answered, tune into the or check out the homeschool.today website and you can pose questions through that. So right now I'm going to try and share my screen and there we go, share screen. And of course, So welcome everyone. Today I have with me Paul Blankenstein from the Saskatchewan Apprenticeship and Trade Certification Commission of the Government of Saskatchewan. Thank you, Paul. We have Lisa Houston from Assiniboine College in Brandon, Manitoba. And we have Mike Prattis from Brock University in the Niagara region of Ontario. So 3 different parts of the country, and we're glad to have you all with us tonight. So I'm going to get started right away with the question, can home educated students apply to your institution, and do you want them to? Maybe I could start with Lisa.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. The simple answer, absolutely. Home educated students can apply to any of our programs at Assiniboine. We have a variety of programs within different areas of interest, including agriculture and environment, business, food and hospitality, health and human services, technology, and trades. The application process is the same for all students. It's an easy online application system. Anyone interested in going directly into, I should mention, into an apprenticeship program instead of taking one of our pre-employment trades programs should directly do so through our Manitoba apprenticeship if you're considering coming to Manitoba. The application process, I'd like to just mention, and a link to our programs. We've got a great website, so I can provide those at the end to Peter, but it's assiniboine.net/programs to see all the individual programs under those areas of interest. But we absolutely welcome all homeschooled applicants.
Excellent. And Mike, tell us about Brock University.
Yeah, I would first of all, thank you for having us here. We're really happy to be here, and hello everyone across the country. I would echo Lisa's comments and say absolutely yes, we certainly welcome homeschool applicants, and as we progress through the panel, I'll speak a little bit more about the application process specifically to Brock, but we offer programs in 6 undergraduate faculties, and we've had homeschoolers succeed in each of our faculties, programs in each of our faculties. I would go back and say the most recent stats I found were from 2012 that said there were 24,000 homeschooled students in Canada. We, as higher education institutions, recognize that we need to have a place for these students. So we actively encourage homeschool applicants to apply to Brock, and we look forward to seeing you on campus.
Excellent. And Paul, tell us about the trades in Saskatchewan. Are home educators welcome?
Absolutely. We value very much homeschool students, and the process is very simple. We'll get into that as we go through this little presentation. We value our young people here. If they are homeschool raised, it's a simple process that they can get into the skilled trades. There is a process that they might have to write a bit of an exam, an entrance exam, just to see where they sit in, or if they, for some way, have been able to graduate with an actual high school diploma, we would honor that. And basically why we do that is we don't want to set them up for failure. We want to make sure they got all the right math, the right sciences, so that once they get into their apprenticeship training, they are successful. We are partnered in the trades here with Sask Polytech, which is our provincial college, Sask Polytech, and they do a tremendous job at training the apprenticeship, the technical training part of their apprenticeship. And then we ultimately give them the journey person exam. And if they are successful, they are a certified journey person in our province. And if it's a red seal trade, all across Canada.
Excellent. Okay, so that gets into the next question pretty directly, and that is, what pathway do home educated students follow to get into your program or your institution? And so Paul, you mentioned some of that. Is there anything else you'd like to add in terms of the pathway that home educated students will follow?
Well, if it even can start as early as grade 10 here in our province, we have a tremendous little program called the Saskatchewan Youth Apprenticeship Program. And basically what that is, it's a free of charge program that we provide to any high school student that is interested in the skilled trades. If they're interested in it, this 12-step little project that they work through partners with the curriculum that they're already studying, and it helps them understand a little bit more about what would be required if they did decide to go into the skilled trades. It really polishes up their resume. It allows them to get a couple of courses under their belts, the Young Worker Readiness Certificate course, which prepares them to understand, what safety all about and all these things. And what we do is we promote that so that young people can participate in this program, graduate, and then we give them some significant financial benefits as they work through their apprenticeship.
Excellent. Thank you, Paul. Mike, let me turn to you next. What pathways might students, home educated students, follow towards successful admission at Brock?
Thanks, Peter. Homeschool applicants are going to apply very similarly to other students across the country through a central application. At Brock, all of our homeschool applicants are assessed on their academic preparation, so we base on your academics, and every homeschool application is assessed individually by one of our evaluation specialists in our undergraduate admissions office, and they'll work with you throughout the admissions process as you start to submit documents and work with you throughout the process. Interested applicants also should consult our website, where we have an homeschooled application checklist available, where it'll detail what kinds of documents that you need to submit and what information should be included on each of those documents. We're really looking for two main documents. We're looking for a transcript of your grade 11 and grade 12 grades. This is going to include things like course codes, your midterm grades, your final grades, and it can come directly from a Ministry of Education approved and accredited secondary school or third-party curriculum providers such as the Royal Conservatory of Music, or directly from your homeschool teacher. We're also going to look for course outlines for all of your grade 12 courses. And these course outlines should include an assessment plan. So how you're being assessed in the course, what kinds of assignments are you going to be taking and doing? How are you being graded in the course? A schedule of activities, which might include the topics, different assignments that you're taking throughout the course. Essentially, the more information that you can provide in these documents, the better, because this is what our admissions team will use to determine equivalencies to the Ontario Secondary School curriculum. Again, the more information you can provide our admissions team, the better. We also welcome standardized test results, SATs, ACTs, Royal Conservatory of Music examination results. If you've taken AP or IB examinations as well, we can certainly take those. Official documentation may look different for every homeschooled applicant, and it's going to depend on your academic experience. And so we welcome homeschooled applicants, and we're willing to work with you throughout that process.
All right, thank you, Mike. And Lisa, tell us about the pathways to admission at Assiniboine College.
Yeah, absolutely. So all applications that are submitted by someone who is home-skilled, they're all assessed individually. However, for the majority, most of these applicants have to undergo an assessment of special circumstance through the form of a CAT test. So this just ensures that the math, English, and science is of high school equivalency. And for the most part, this ensures high admissibility comes from this, much like what Paul mentioned as well. I mentioned before that the application process is the same for all students. It's an easy online application process on assiniboine.net/apply, and along with submitting the application form and fee, the applicant should submit their transcript and or the letter of grade 12 completion from the homeschooling office, and here in Manitoba, that's through our Manitoba Education and Training. For applicants homeschooled outside of Manitoba, their applications should include the written confirmation from an authorized representative of the Provincial Department of Education. And if the applicant doesn't have a transcript or letter of completion, they definitely should contact, and we encourage them to contact our admissions department prior to even applying. And that's at admissions@assiniboine.net, and they can work with all applicants on getting through the process. I do want to mention that each of our programs at Assiniboine has their own specific admission requirements, and those can be seen online on our webpage as well. But generally, a standard grade 12 Manitoba high school diploma or equivalent is a requirement for all programs. But there are many of our programs will require further course requirements. So for example, we have what's called a civil technician certificate, and that requires not just the high school grade 12 diploma, but it also needs to include the English 40G or 40S, and then either a pre-calculus or applied math with a minimum mark of 65%. And that's just one example example, other programs have different requirements. So it's always important to check that. But, you know, of standard preparation, again, the grade 12 English, math, and a science, I usually would guide people towards a biology in that case. However, we do have some programs, particularly in trades, that will ask for a physics. And then we do have a web page dedicated solely to our homeschooled applicants. And again, I can supply that to Peter to provide to our guests. And I do want to mention, we also have 5 programs at the college that are competitive entry. And so that means that a supplementary application form and possibly even further steps beyond that will be required for those programs. And an example might be an interview, might be the CAT test, but if they've already gone through that, that'll be covered off.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Lisa. Let's go in the reverse order again. I'll ask this question. You've had home educated students go through your institution or your programs. How have they fared? How have they done? Lisa, can I start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have the specific data, unfortunately, for specific to our homeschooled students. But what I can tell you is we do graduate surveys every year with our most recent grads. Our most recent survey with our 2019 graduates, though, did tell us that 92% of our recent grads have found employment. And 82% of them in the field of study. And we consider that to be high success across the board. We are a learn by doing college. We're very hands-on. We take pride in that. And we take pride in the fact that our graduates are coming out after 1 or 2 years, sometimes 3, very prepared and job ready to walk out into the workforce, into jobs that they a lot of times have typically already been able to secure prior to graduation through things like practicums and work placements. So high level of success and achievement for grads across the board.
Great. And Mike, how have home educators fared at Brock?
Thanks, Peter. I don't have specific figures I can release today, but I can say that we've had homeschooled students who have studied in each of our undergraduate faculties, and they've been offered admission into some of our most competitive programs, including medical science, business administration co-op, accelerated math, nursing, computer science co-op, and sport management. These students not only were accepted into the program, but progressed into their 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year, eventually graduating from the program. We have lots of supports in place for students as they move into Brock and start their studies. We have an academic orientation program throughout the summer. We're ranked 2nd in Canada for academic advising services. So we have individual advisors for each of our programs that help students progress throughout their program and help them throughout that process. And then at the end, with a Brock degree, we have a 96% graduate success rate. So our graduates are graduating and they're finding work in their fields.
All right. And Paul, how have home educators fared with the trades in Saskatchewan?
Thanks, Peter. I don't have any stats like my colleagues here have said, but I do know firsthand that our homeschooling students do very, very well. A couple things to just point out. Quite often work ethic is very, very solid, and they have a passion for what they're wanting to do. So when you have that drive and that passion for the trade you have chosen, and you have potentially included that Saskatchewan Youth Apprenticeship Program as you've gone through high school and graduated, we see quite clearly that homeschooler students do very, very well in the skilled trades. And if there ever is, because apprenticeship is about 85% on the job training and about 15% of the year at technical training at Sask Polytech. And I always tell students specifically, at the homeschool conference, if I have an opportunity to present, that, if you get into your technical training and you're getting a little foggy in some areas and you have given it your best shot, ask for help, because we will provide some mentorship, some extra help, free of charge. We want to see our apprentices succeed. And if they are willing to go the extra mile and do what they need to do to be successful, we will be there to help them. So I can confidently say, if the effort is there, they will be successful. And I know firsthand several folks personally that have graduated as a homeschool student, gone through, become an electrician, One of them is now a certified welder, and they're doing very, very well.
Excellent. All right. Well, I've got one last question before we conclude, and it's simply this: give us a plug for doing the trades in Saskatchewan, or attending Brock, or attending Assiniboine. Tell us why your institution or your program is worth pursuing. Give us a plug. Paul, why don't we start with you?
All right. Well, I can tell you, I was just on another call there this morning, and I was talking about statistics and retirements going on in our province and the demand. We're into a big issue here pretty quick. If our young people do not graduate from high school, get registered into the trades, and it's all because of an aging workforce, but also the demand that they're predicting the construction trades, the manufacturing trades are going to deal with here pretty quick. So I'm just going to encourage young people that if you like working with your hands, you want to create things, build things, cut things, cook things, weld things, fix things, maybe a career in the skilled trades is for you. Do that youth apprenticeship program, get it done, and you can graduate specifically as a homeschool student and an SWA graduate. Go through your apprenticeship with zero cost to you or the bank of mom and dad, and be a certified journey person about 23, 24 years of age.
All right, that's a good sales pitch. Mike, how about Brock? Why should people consider Brock?
Thanks, Peter. So at Brock, we're located in the heart of Ontario's wine regions in the city of St. Catharines. We're an hour outside of the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area, and only 20 minutes from Niagara Falls. You don't need to go far to find something to do after you're done your classes. We're a world-class tourist destination, home to over 50 wineries, 26 national historic sites, 26 beaches, over 100 kilometers of trails and paths to explore. The Brock's main campus itself, we're located on top of the Niagara Escarpments. We overlook the whole region. You can see the CN Tower in Toronto, even on a clear day. We're ranked top 5 in Canada for student satisfaction. So when we asked our graduates if they would come back to redo their Brock experience, overwhelmingly, they said yes. We're a world-class mid-sized university of about 19,000 students. We offer 120 academic programs, and we have students studying from over 100 countries around the world. We're small enough to be world-class, or large enough to be world-class, but small enough to offer class sizes of 20 starting in your first year with our seminar, lab, and tutorial system. Over all of our programs have experiential learning components built into them. Over half of them have a co-op option where you can get 12 to 20 months of paid work experience all before you even graduate.
Excellent, thank you, Mike. And Lisa, why do we consider Assiniboine College?
Well, being a graduate myself, it's not hard for me to brag a little bit about Assiniboine. I'm it's dear to my heart. And I guess the first thing I would say is the exceptional student experience. So, you know, as Paul mentioned, there's going to be a shortage. We know in Manitoba there's skilled workers. There's going to be a shortage of them very soon. So we have that combination of classroom theory along with hands-on learning that prepares our students to go out in the workforce immediately upon graduation. You know, the students at Assiniboine take programs that prepare them to be work ready, walk right into their chosen career path. And they've enjoyed that student experience in large part due to our small class sizes. Our instructor to student ratios is quite small, which gives students the opportunity to really develop relationships with their instructors. You know, at most, we are a class size, depending on the program, might be 35 students, but on average, it's around 25. So that's a nice setup, and you can definitely, your instructors are accessible, and it's a great classroom experience. You get to know your classmates quite well. We're very community driven. It's in our name, Assiniboine Community College. We have exceptional faculty. I love to brag about our faculty. They have many years of industry experience. So for example, you know, we've got instructors that are in our media communications program that have directly come from industry, and a lot of them are still doing a lot of projects outside of the classroom hours. So things like documentaries, you know, they're working on that still. So they're bringing that real life, hands-on industry expertise to the table. And then I do want to say, and I hope Mike would agree with me, we see quite often that many students are now doing a combination of both college and university. We offer advanced diplomas for students who are coming to us who already have post-secondary education under their belt, along with our certificates. And we see quite often students might come to us first, get a little bit hands-on learning, because we're much like a high school. Programming during the day, it's a Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30, and then they might move on to university, or opposite, they'll get their university degree and then come to us for some hands-on learning. And my last plug, I'm just going to say, please visit assiniboine.net/experience-ACC just to get you started. We, visitors can request customized mail packages or do virtual tours, or just connect with us in the recruitment department, and we can give you all the information you need about any of our individual programs, or the student supports that we have in place at the college as well, and there's many.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Lisa, Mike, and Paul. I think that students and parents watching are going to be a little bit conflicted about where they want to choose to go. I think you've all given a great pitch tonight. Well, thank you so much. And we'll post all the information about where people can find you and make their admissions inquiries in the coming days. So thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you all again.
Okay, so there are some of the key websites and email addresses for folks. Hopefully everybody has a chance to write down what's most important to them there. And again, you can see that again if you tune into the video, which will be on the homeschool.today website. So I'm going to stop sharing that screen, and we're back with Patty Marler. Patty, we're going to take just a few minutes, I think. We don't want to keep people too long. I know it's getting into the evening in most parts of the country, pretty late now in some places. But maybe we could take a couple questions. I saw one that I know that you can answer. It's certainly right up your alley and your personal experience. And this was, how do I get my child, can my home educated child get into nursing school? And I think somebody else also asked about medical school, and we could probably extend that to engineering and a number of other professional faculties. But why not tell us about, nursing school in particular? It's a little more specialized. It's not a general arts degree. There are more prerequisites. So how do you tackle that challenge?
Sure. I know of a couple students who've done that, one of them being one of my daughters.
Yeah.
So my daughter went to community college. And so there was a smaller college, a private college that offered the programming, and they were very friendly to homeschoolers. Similar to Linda, we had an admissions counselor say yes, and then we had to jump through some hoops because he left. There's always just details. But the portfolio and advocating for our child, showing the scope of biology material that we had done was very significant. And in the end, when they were humming and hawing and not sure, I said, what do you have to lose? I said, your program's not full. This program was not competitive. They were accepting students who applied because they were a bit of a smaller institution. And I said, what do you have to lose? You have our money coming in. If she fails, she fails. And she did not. And so she went in. I know of others who've gone not to private schools, but have also gone into their institutions. They've advocated for their programs. Some have done some of those open study courses that we talked about. Using the methodology that I described earlier, you can get into almost any program.
Great.
Yeah.
Linda, did you have something to add to that?
I would like to.
Sure.
I appreciate what Patty said. And that was great that you spoke up and said, "Hey, what have you got to lose?" I've dealt with some people who've tried to get their students into competitive entry programs. And a competitive entry program would be when there's 100 spots and 300 students apply. I have been to a presentation at our provincial conference by a university admissions counselor. And what they do in their offices is when they get all these people applying, they stack up all their transcripts and they go through and make sure they've all met the minimum requirements, and all that have met the minimum requirements go to another pile, blah, blah, blah. And then when it's competitive entry, they go strictly by marks. They'll take 300 apply, they just rank them by marks and take, okay, these 100 had the top marks, they're the ones that get in. Problem with home educated people like us who have not done any credits, that can be more challenging to get in. They don't have to bother. They've got their 100 people. They've met their quota. They've filled their program. So they don't necessarily have to take the time to look at a home educated person, even though they're just as qualified. So that can be more challenging. So that's where it helps to know where your student wants to go, because you can prepare for that. If one of my students had wanted to go into a competitive entry program, I would have had them do 5 high school credits for grade 12 via distance or whatever, because they need that, or chances are fairly slim they would get into a competitive entry program. So there are ways of getting into anything. Another way could be to do 5 Athabasca University courses for grade 11 and 12. And those could be used in the competitive entry program to get in. And I could talk a whole lot more on it, Peter, as you know.
That's
I'll
right.
leave it there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, you bet. Patty, were there any other questions you caught in the chat that you think we could answer?
Yeah, there were a couple. So one of them was, am I lowering my daughter's or my child's chances of getting into post-secondary? I would say no. I'd say that there's, I've known of some kids who haven't gotten into university because their marks in school weren't high enough, but home ed kids who I know got into the same program. So with their portfolio. So it really, really depends. And, Linda was talking about those competitive programs and how much more challenging they are. And there's some institutions that are recognizing that highest marks at times don't equate to the best students. And so one of my kids was looking at a competitive program, and they now have alternative routes for that to try and get the best students instead of the best marked students. So things are always changing. Yeah. So no, I don't think it limits the chances.
Okay. Linda, what do you think?
I concur with Patty 100%. There is absolutely no limits to what your home educated student can do with no diploma. They just enter through a different gate, a narrow gate as opposed to the wide gate. So parents just need to advocate for their students, and where there's a will, there's a way. So.
Yeah. One thing I'll say about universities in particular, and it's a little different than colleges and the trades, but universities are used to having students who come from some other pathway than the traditional public school pathway. Universities for decades, well, centuries, in fact, have taken foreign students or students from outside the province. So there's always a second or third or fourth pathway for admissions. So home educators should never worry that there isn't a pathway for higher education, especially when it comes to the universities. All right, Patty, is there another question we got in the chat?
Yeah, there was. So someone asked about the yearly 8-course route, and if that's something that I would suggest or something different. First of all, in terms of suggesting, I think what you do in your home education program is what works best for you and your family. So every family I know approaches things somewhat different. In terms of our home education, I would have approached it on a subject basis compared to sort of a yearly basis. So instead of doing physics 20 this year, physics 30 next year, which we didn't do, by the way, we just did physics. So we would just study physics one year using a homeschool curriculum, and that's what we would focus on. Another year we would do biology, and another year, chemistry, or maybe 2 at once or something, depending. So I found that easier to do it. The bell never goes off. You just study it and you're done. And so sometimes you're done biology in grade 10, but you're not done physics till grade 12, or English. English is something that's good to do all the time. But yeah, I just say do what works, but drop your plan. Drop your plan and do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Linda, do you have some thoughts on that?
We use the 8-subject approach because that's what post-secondaries want to see on a transcript, but that's what they see. But what we did a much more of an eclectic unschooling approach. So my child would have a whole whack of activities that they did, and then we took those activities and slotted them into a subject. Again, I have a handout on that. If anybody wants more information on that, I'd be happy to share that. You can send your email address or contact Peter, and he can send you mine.
Okay, that's great. And were there any others, Patty? I see somebody's sending another one in here, but
Yeah.
we did lose the
was
questions
all
people
that I
asked
said.
early on. So if we haven't asked your question and you asked it near the beginning of the seminar, some of those disappeared in the chat when we had our little glitch in the middle of the presentation there. So
There was
There were
one about,
questions.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
There was
Linda.
one about getting into medical school. And I would just, that would be a postgraduate study. So you would already have a degree. Once you already have a degree, it doesn't matter what you did for high school. They're just basing your entrance, law school, med school, any of that would just be based on what you did in your undergraduate program.
okay, yeah, that's a very good point. Thanks, Linda. Patty, did you have another?
Yeah, there were some questions that were emailed in earlier, and someone asked about different approaches to schedules, to learning, to teaching. And I would suggest that you go to the homeschool.today website where under educational resources, I can't remember which heading
I
it's.
think, yeah.
There we go. Educational methods. We have a whole bunch of different methods for home educating outlined there. In terms of the best curriculum, I don't know that there is a best curriculum. I think there's a lot of really good homeschooling curriculum, and depending on the needs of your student and you, then you go with that. And that's why those resource providers are so valuable.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So we did have one more question pop in here. I don't know
Yeah.
if one of you can answer it. How do we determine whether a subject is equivalent to a 4U designation? And I'm not sure which province that is myself. It's not Ontario.
Yeah. I'm not sure either. I think the important thing that we can do is we can look at scope and sequence of different programs. I find those really hard to read sometimes, especially at a high school level. But you may just want to talk to a resource provider, ask them what their thoughts are on the curriculum. Some programs aren't necessarily accredited. None of the programs that my kids took were accredited, but that doesn't mean they were lacking in rigor or scope. Some of the homeschool programs are equivalent to AP and IB programming. So just because it's homeschool doesn't mean it's not difficult.
Yeah. So sort of a follow on to that question, and I'm sorry, for you apparently is Ontario, is just the idea of how do you approve equivalency, I guess, is probably the best way we could describe that question. You know, could you take an online course in the States, for example? I think the question might be a little bit, we should probably look at the question from the other direction though. The question is, what is the university? And every university is different, by the way. Like every university is different in terms of their admission policies. What are they looking for? You know, one university in Ontario I'm aware of, primarily they're concerned about seeing your portfolio. They don't care so much about, you know, marks or standardized tests. Others may have more of an interest in you writing something like the SAT or the ACT, these standardized tests. So, you know, the first step is always to approach the universities you're interested in, and not just the admissions department generally, but, you know, if you're interested in music or you're interested in nursing or you're interested in engineering or just general arts, you know, talk to an admissions counselor who's familiar with that program and find out from them what they're looking for. Find out from them what the pathway is to successfully applying. Linda, you were going to say something.
one parent told me for their student getting them into the University of Saskatchewan to find out if their grade 12 sciences were equivalent as a, and would it be acceptable as a prerequisite. They actually took their Apologia science books into the science department at the university, and the professor who was in charge of that subject area had a look at it and said, yep, if they study that, they can we'll accept that as a prerequisite. So that was a unique approach too. But like you said, Peter, every place has a different way of doing things. So
Exactly.
And I can tell you just from a student standpoint, the same curriculum that Linda is talking about is one that we used for our nurse, our young nurse. And she told me that the biology that we did at home was significantly more rigorous and challenging and more in depth than what was required in some of her courses. So she was very thankful for the depth of learning that she was involved in at home.
Exactly. All right. Well, I think we've taken it a little longer than we had initially intended, but I think we got some great questions and answers in. At the end here, we had a bit of an interruption partway through. For those who missed, part of the presentation because it was hard to get back in, or there was some garbled stuff in the middle. Again, the video in full will be available on the homeschool.today website within the next about 48 hours. And so we'd encourage you to take a look at it again and pick up on the parts you might have missed. But we're so appreciative tonight to Linda Karn, to Patty Marler, to our other panelists, the graduates, and thank you to all of you for joining us tonight. And again, if you have questions that weren't answered tonight, contact us through the homeschool.today website. We'll be happy to help you out.